I turned 34 in silence again. No calls and no texts came through. Just my brother's smiling face online, surrounded by balloons and photographers. Then my pay stub hit my inbox, showing a six-figure retention bonus, and my mother called within minutes asking for a small family favor. What they did not know was that I had been keeping receipts for 23 years. This time I was not blowing out a candle. I was lighting a fuse. My name is Adeline Powell. I stood on the sidewalk outside the glass towers of Blackwell Compliance Group and watched my breath ghost into the cold Philadelphia night. My hands were trembling inside my coat pockets. It was not from the cold. It was the specific, vibrating exhaustion that comes after working 14 hours straight to save a client from a federal indictment. I had spent the entire day reviewing thousands of lines of data and finding the one discrepancy that would have cost a Fortune 500 company millions. I had won. I had done the impossible. Yet as I hailed a cab on Walnut Street, the only thing I could feel was the hollow ache in my chest that had nothing to do with work. The ride back to my apartment was a blur of streetlights and rain streaking against the window. I kept my phone face down on the leather seat next to me. I knew if I looked at it, I would see the date. October 24th. Today was the day I turned 34 years old, when I unlocked the door to my apartment. The silence greeted me like a physical weight. It was a beautiful space, curated and expensive, paid for by a decade of missed holidays and 80-hour work weeks. I walked into the kitchen and set my bag on the marble island. There, sitting in the center of the counter, was the small white box I had purchased from the bakery near the office at 6 in the morning. I opened it. Inside sat a single red velvet cupcake. I reached into the junk drawer and pulled out a solitary wax candle. I jammed it into the frosting. I did not light it. I just stared at the wick, waiting for a vibration from my phone, a ring, a notification, anything that would prove I existed to the people who shared my DNA. The silence stretched on. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I made the mistake. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the social media icon. A masochistic reflex I could not control. I opened the app. The first image on my feed was a professional photograph, high definition and perfectly lit. It was my brother, Dylan Powell. He was standing in the center of the ballroom at the Briarcrest Country Club, a glass of champagne raised high, his teeth white and perfect, his smile easy. He was surrounded by balloons in gold and silver. A massive banner hung behind him. Celebrating Dylan's big announcement, I felt the blood drain from my face. I scrolled down, reading the captions. My mother had posted it 2 hours ago. "Our boy is unstoppable." She had written, "The Powell name shines again." So proud of his new venture. I scrolled further. My father had commented immediately, "Success is a habit. Proud of you, son." My Aunt Brenda had chimed in, "The golden boy does it again. Love you. Dylan." There were dozens of comments. Friends, neighbors, cousins, everyone was there, celebrating whatever vague achievement Dylan had managed to stumble into this time. I checked the date stamp on the photo. It was taken tonight, while I was burying myself in compliance logs to distract myself from the date. My entire family was gathered 20 miles away, drinking expensive wine and toasting to Dylan. There was not a single mention of my name. Not one post, not one story, not even a belated text. The pain was sharp and familiar, like pressing on a bruise that never quite healed. It triggered a cascade of memories, flashing through my mind like headlights on a dark highway. I was 12 years old. I was sitting on the stairs in my soccer uniform, waiting for my parents to bring out the cake. But the cake never came out because Dylan had scraped his knee at his lacrosse game. And the drama of his injury required a trip to the emergency room and 3 hours of coddling. "We will celebrate next weekend." "Addie," my mother had said. We never did. I was 18. It was the day I was supposed to have a family dinner for my adulthood. But Dylan had been dumped by his high school girlfriend that afternoon, and his heartbreak took center stage. My father had taken him to a basketball game to cheer him up. My mother had stayed home to comfort him. I ate a sandwich alone in my room. I was 22, I had just graduated summa cum laude. I walked across the stage, scanning the crowd for my parents. They were not there. They had texted me 10 minutes before the ceremony started. Dylan had a panic attack about his own finals. They had to drive up to his campus to calm him down. "We are so proud of you in spirit." The text had read, "Every milestone I ever achieved was a footnote in the biography of Dylan." I set the phone down, feeling the familiar burn of tears I refused to shed. I was 34. I was a senior compliance officer. I was done crying over missed parties. Just then, a notification banner slid down from the top of my screen. It was not a text from my family. It was an email from the Blackwell HR system. The subject line read, "Notice of Retention Bonus and Performance Review." I opened it. The numbers were bolded in the center of the screen. $150,000. It was a retention bonus, a direct deposit that had hit my account at midnight. Below the number was a note from the senior partners. "Adeline, you saved the quarter. This is a token of our appreciation. We cannot afford to lose you." I stared at the number. $150,000. It was more money than Dylan had made in the last 3 years combined. In the corporate world, I was indispensable. I was valued. My worth was quantified in 6-figure sums and glowing performance reviews. To the world, I was a success. To my family, I was an invisible bank account. The phone in my hand buzzed, jarring me from my thoughts. The screen lit up. "Incoming call, Mom." My heart did a traitorous little flip. A spark of hope, pathetic and resilient, ignited in my chest. Maybe she had realized. Maybe she saw the date. Maybe she was calling to say she was sorry they were at a party. But she loved me and happy birthday. I let it ring 3 times. Then I slid my thumb across the screen. "Hello," I said. My voice was steady. "Adeline." "Good. You picked up," Marianne Powell said. Her voice was breathless, loud, competing with the ambient noise of clinking glasses and laughter in the background. "I was worried you would be asleep. You know how you are with your early nights." "I just got home from work," I said. "Work. Always work," she sighed, dismissive. "Listen, honey, are you free right now? We have a little situation here." I closed my eyes. A situation. Yes, it is Dylan's big night. You know, we are announcing his new branding partnership. It is huge. But the venue is being difficult. The card your father gave them for the deposit on the extended open bar is declining. It is some banking error, I am sure, but it is so embarrassing. The manager is making a scene. She paused. I could hear music in the background. Jazz. Expensive. "We need you to handle it," she continued, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper she used when she wanted to make me feel like an insider. "Just call the venue and give them your card details. We will sort it out later. It is only $5,000. We cannot let the night end early. Dylan is so happy. Adeline, you should see him." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "Is that all?" I asked. "What do you mean?" she asked, sounding annoyed. "It is urgent. Adeline, do not be difficult. Oh, and Dylan wants to know if you can reach out to your contact at the Times. He thinks this launch deserves press. I told him you would try." She did not know what day it was. She truly did not know. "Adeline," she prompted, "are you there?" I looked at the unlit candle on the cupcake. I looked at the email on my laptop screen showing a deposit of $150,000. I looked at the photo of my brother smiling in a room full of people who had forgotten I existed. A strange, cold calm settled over me. It was not the numbness of depression. It was the clarity of a surgeon picking up a scalpel. "I am here," I said. "Good," she said. "I will text you the manager's number. Handle it quickly. Love you." The line went dead. She hung up. I stood in the silence of my kitchen. The vibration of her voice still echoed in my ear. Handle it. Fix it. Pay for it. For 23 years. I had been the fixer. I had been the safety net. I had been the one who stayed silent so Dylan could shine. I had waited for them to remember me. I had waited for them to love me not for what I could provide, but for who I was. I looked at the cupcake. I picked up the unlit candle and pulled it out of the frosting. I snapped the wax stick in half and dropped it into the trash. I was done waiting. I picked up the lighter from the counter. I flicked it. The flame flared up, bright and dangerous in the dim kitchen. This year, I am not waiting to be remembered, I whispered to the empty room. I blew out the flame. Then I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it The Ledger. The morning sun sliced through the glass walls of Blackwell Compliance Group like a scalpel. It was 7:30 in the morning. While most of Philadelphia was just waking up to pour their first cup of coffee, I was already standing in the center of my office with a headset pressed against my ear. I was managing a crisis that threatened to swallow a mid-sized logistics firm whole. I need you to listen to me very carefully, I said into the microphone. My voice was low and devoid of the panic that was currently making the client on the other end hyperventilate. If you shred those documents, you go to prison. If you hand them over to me within the hour, we can contextualize the error as a procedural oversight. Do you understand the difference? There was a frantic pause on the line before the client agreed. I ended the call and tossed the headset onto my mahogany desk. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. This was the posture I had perfected over a decade in high-stakes corporate compliance. I stood straightest when everything else was collapsing. It was a survival mechanism I had learned not in business school, but at the dinner table in Briarcrest. Tessa Hart walked in without knocking. She kicked the door shut with the heel of her designer boot and dropped 2 steaming cups of espresso onto my desk. Tessa was the only person at Blackwell who did not fear me. She was a forensic accountant with eyes that could spot a rounding error from across the room and a mouth that had never known the taste of a lie. "You look like you are ready to fire someone," Tessa said, sliding into the chair opposite me. "Or like you are about to be fired. Which one is it?" "Neither," I said, picking up the coffee. "Just another Tuesday, regulatory oversight, the usual." Tessa narrowed her eyes. She studied my face with uncomfortable precision. "I know that look. That is the look you get when you have spoken to your mother. Did they call about yesterday?" I took a sip of the bitter coffee to avoid answering. "Drop it, Tess." "They did not call," she stated. It was not a question. 34 years old and they still treat your birthday like a leap year that rarely happens. I should send them an invoice for emotional damages. "It is fine," I lied. "I am over it." "You are not over it. You are burying it. There is a difference." Before I could defend myself, my personal phone buzzed against the glass surface of the desk. It was not a call. It was a notification from a messaging app I rarely used. I glanced down and frowned. "You have been added to Dylan's Launch Gala, Inner Circle." I stared at the screen. My mother was notoriously bad with technology. She constantly confused group chats with direct messages and frequently sent complaints about caterers to the caterers themselves. She must have been trying to forward a contact and selected my name by mistake. I reached for the phone to leave the group before things got awkward. But my thumb hovered over the screen. Messages were flooding in. They were not talking to me. They were talking about me. I unlocked the phone. Tessa watched me, sensing the shift in the air. "What is it?" she asked. "My mother added me to a planning chat by accident." I said, "Read this." I slid the phone across the desk to her. We both looked down at the stream of blue and gray bubbles popping up in real time. The first message was from my father. "Gordon, I saw the ticker on Bloomberg. Blackwell just paid out their retention bonuses for the senior compliance officers. Adeline got paid. She can finally contribute like family." My stomach turned over. He had not just guessed. He had been tracking my company's financial cycle. He knew exactly when the money hit my account. The next message was from my Aunt Brenda. "Excellent. We need to secure the platinum table for the gala. It is $25,000. Can she cover that? Also, make sure her name is on the invite list. Is it spelled Adeline or Adeline? I never remember." I felt a cold flush of heat climb up my neck. They did not even know how to spell my name. They had known me for 3 decades, and I was a typo to them. My mother replied a second later, Adeline, I think, whatever. It does not matter on the check. Just put her down for the table. Tessa let out a sharp, incredulous noise. They are spelling your name wrong while plotting to take your money. That is almost impressive in its cruelty. But the next message was the one that made the room stop spinning and settle into a sharp, terrifying focus. It was from Dylan. Don't ask her yet. Let me do it. I will handle her. She always caves. I just need to make her feel like she is part of the team. She always caves, I read aloud. The words tasted like ash. Tessa snatched the phone from the desk and scrolled up, her eyes scanning the history that I had access to now that I was in the group. Her expression shifted from annoyance to horror. Adeline, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Look at this. She pointed to a thread from 3 days ago. Gordon, we can use her client list for the guest invites. If Adeline brings the VP of marketing from Blackwell, Dylan can pitch him on the new venture during the cocktail hour. We just need to frame it as a networking opportunity for her. Dylan, good idea. She is desperate for us to be proud of her work. Tell her it is a chance to show off her colleagues. She will bite. I felt the blood drain from my face. I sat back in my leather chair, the leather creaking in the silence of the office. They are not forgetting you, Tessa said, looking up at me with wide, horrified eyes. They are budgeting you. You are a line item. Adeline, you are a funding source and a networking Rolodex. They calculated the cost of your birthday against the profit of Dylan's gala and decided you were an unnecessary expense. $25,000, I said. The number felt heavy in my mouth. They want $25,000 for a table at a party celebrating my brother, and they call it a family obligation. And they want to poach your professional network, Tessa added, tapping the screen. That is the part that scares me. They do not just want your money, they want to harvest your reputation to fertilize Dylan's career. If you bring our VP to this thing, and Dylan embarrasses himself, it is your credibility on the line, not his. I took the phone back. I looked at the messages again. She always caves. It was true. I always caved. For years, I had accepted the crumbs of affection they tossed my way, paying for vacations I was barely invited to, covering emergency loans that were never repaid, and smoothing over Dylan's messes with my legal contacts. I had thought I was buying love. I had thought I was earning my place at the table, but I was not at the table. I was the meal. They are going to ask me tonight, I said, my voice steady again. Mom mentioned a family dinner. They are going to ambush me with the $25,000 request in the guest list. What are you going to do? Tessa asked. She looked ready to fight them herself. You cannot give them a dime. You know that, right? If you give them this, they will bleed you dry. I looked at the group chat one last time before taking a screenshot. I saved the image to the cloud. Then I quietly removed myself from the group before anyone noticed I had been there. I am not going to give them a dime, I said. But I am going to the dinner. Why? Tessa asked. Because they think I am an asset they can liquidate, I said, turning back to my computer screens where the compliance data flowed in endless, irrefutable streams. They forgot what I actually do for a living. I do not just fix problems. Tessa, I investigate fraud. I track hidden assets. I find the truth buried in the numbers. I opened the folder I had created the night before, the ledger. They want a contribution, I said, typing in the figure of $25,000 next to the date. I am going to give them one, but it is not going to be the one they are expecting. Tessa smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. Welcome back to the land of the living. Adeline, I was wondering when you would finally wake up. I am awake, I said, and I have receipts. The driveway to my parents' house in Briarcrest was lined with perfectly manicured boxwoods that looked less like plants and more like sculptures carved from green stone. The house itself loomed at the end of the asphalt, a sprawling colonial revival that projected an image of effortless, generational wealth. It was a lie. Of course, I knew the mortgage rates. I knew about the second refinancing they had done last year to pay for a renovation that nobody needed, but from the outside, the Powell residence was a fortress of stability. I parked my sedan next to Dylan's leased sports car. I took a breath, holding the air in my lungs until my chest burned, and then released it slowly. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was composed. My makeup was flawless. I did not look like a daughter coming home for a warm family meal. I looked like a litigator entering a deposition. Inside, the house smelled of expensive candles and roasting meat. The dining room was staged for a photo shoot. My mother, Mary Ann, had set the table with the good china, the rimmed gold plates reserved for holidays and investors. Crystal goblets caught the light from the chandelier. It was beautiful. It was cold. It was a stage. "Adeline," my mother said. Gliding out of the kitchen, she did not hug me. She offered her cheek, a gesture that ensured our bodies did not actually touch. "You are late. We were about to start without you." "I am on time," I said, checking my watch. 7 o'clock exactly. "Well, it feels late," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Sit down. Your father is already pouring the wine." I took my seat. Across from me, Dylan was already eating a roll, tearing into the bread with a casual entitlement that set my teeth on edge. He looked up and gave me a dazzling, boyish grin. It was the smile that had gotten him out of failing grades in high school and traffic tickets in college. "Hey, Addie," he said. "Good to see you. You look tired. Working hard." "Someone has to," I said. My father, Gordon, entered the room carrying a bottle of Cabernet that I knew cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He poured a glass for Dylan, then one for himself. He filled my glass last, barely splashing enough to cover the bottom. "Let us eat," Gordon said. There was no grace. There was no toast. There was certainly no happy birthday sung for the daughter who had turned 34 the day before. The conversation started immediately, and as always, it revolved around the son of our solar system, Dylan. "The venue is finally confirmed," Dylan said, speaking with his mouth half full. "But the lighting guy is trying to upscale me. He says we need a custom rig for the announcement." "You need the custom rig," my mother said instantly. "It has to look professional. Dylan, we cannot have shadows on your face when you make the speech." "Exactly," Dylan nodded. "That is what I said. But it pushes the budget up another $8,000. Gordon cut his steak with surgical precision. The knife scraped against the porcelain, a harsh sound that made me wince. "We will find the money," he said. "The launch has to be perfect. The Powell name is on the line." He looked up then, his eyes locking onto mine. The prelude was over. It was time for the main act. "Speaking of the budget," Gordon said, his voice dropping an octave into his serious business tone, "we need to finalize the contributions for the gala next month. Your mother and I have covered the venue deposit and the catering. Dylan has handled the marketing costs." I took a sip of water. I knew what was coming. I waited. "We need you to cover the platinum table and the open bar package," Gordon stated. It was not a request. "The total comes to $25,000. I know you just received your retention bonus from Blackwell. It is a substantial sum. You can afford it." I set my glass down. The water rippled. "You want $25,000, I repeated. My mother let out a long, shuddering sigh. She pressed a hand to her chest, her eyes glistening with sudden, practiced tears. "Oh, Adeline, please do not make this difficult. I have not slept in 3 nights. I am worried sick about this event. If it does not go perfectly, Dylan's investors might get cold feet. Do you want your brother to fail? Do you want me to have a heart attack from the stress?" It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. She was leveraging her own health, however fictitious, to open my wallet. Dylan leaned forward, his expression shifting to one of earnest, pleading sincerity. "It is not just about the money, Addie. It is about showing a united front. If you buy the platinum table, we can seat the Blackwell executives there. It makes us look powerful. It makes us look like a dynasty. You are so amazing at handling these details. Just help us out. It will make us look united." The word hung in the air. United. I looked at them. I looked at my father, who saw me as a bank ledger. I looked at my mother, who saw me as a cause of stress. I looked at my brother, who saw me as a stepping stone. "United?" I said softly. "Yes," Dylan said, encouraged by my tone. "Exactly. Family first." I picked up my napkin and unfolded it slowly, placing it on my lap. I looked directly at my father. "United," I said again, my voice clearer this time. "Like how every single one of you forgot my birthday yesterday." The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Dylan froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. My mother blinked, the tears in her eyes suddenly drying up as confusion replaced the performance. My father just frowned, as if I had spoken in a foreign language. "What?" my mother asked. "My birthday," I said. "It was yesterday, October 24th. I turned 34. Nobody called, nobody texted, but you had time to post about Dylan's announcement. You had time to plan a gala. You just did not have time for me." My father put down his knife. He looked annoyed, not guilty, annoyed. "Oh, for God's sake! Adeline," he snapped. "You are being dramatic." "Am I?" I asked. "Yes, you are," he said, his voice rising. "We are discussing the future of this family. We are discussing a pivotal business launch, and you are whining about a birthday. You are a grown woman, not a child. We would have celebrated it later. We always do." "You never do," I corrected him. "We never celebrate it later. You just forget it until the next year." "Stop it," my mother hissed. She looked around the empty room as if the neighbors could hear us through the brick walls. "You are ruining dinner. Why do you always have to make everything about yourself? Your brother is under so much pressure right now." "I am under pressure too," I said. "I work 14 hours a day." "That is different," my mother said dismissively. "You are an employee. Dylan is building an empire." "I am not giving you $25,000, I said. I said it quietly. I did not shout. I did not cry. I just stated it as a fact, the way I would state a compliance violation to a board of directors. The air left the room. "Excuse me?" Gordon asked. His face turned a shade of dark red. "I am not paying for the table," I said. "I am not paying for the bar. I am not giving you any money for this party." "You have the money," Gordon growled. "I saw the transfer reports. I know what Blackwell pays." "That money is mine," I said. "I earned it." Gordon slammed his hand down on the table. The silverware rattled. "You earned it because we raised you. We gave you the education. We gave you the connections. You owe this family everything you are. Do not be selfish. Adeline, it is an ugly look on you." "Selfish," I repeated. "I am selfish because I won't fund a party for the brother who forgot I exist." "Dylan is the real legacy here," Gordon shouted. He was not pretending anymore. The mask of the polite patriarch was gone. "He is the one who is going to put our name on buildings. He is the one taking risks. You are just a glorified accountant. You push papers. You are safe. The least you can do is support the one person in this family who actually has a vision." The words hit me like physical blows. Glorified accountant, safe, real legacy. I looked at Dylan. He did not defend me. He did not look ashamed. He just looked at me with a vague impatience, as if he was waiting for me to stop talking so he could get the check. I realized then that it was not just about the money. It never was. It was about the hierarchy. In their world, I was the fuel, and Dylan was the fire. I was expected to burn myself up so he could shine. I stood up. "Sit down," Gordon ordered. "We are not finished." "I am," I said. "If you walk out that door," my mother warned, her voice trembling with genuine anger now, "do not expect us to come running after you. You are breaking this family apart over money. It is disgusting." "I am not breaking it," I said, picking up my purse. "I am just finally looking at the bill." "Adeline," Dylan called out, trying one last time. "Come on, Don't be like this. Just sit down. We can work out a payment plan if cash flow is the issue. He still did not get it. He thought I was negotiating. I did not answer him. I turned my back on the beautiful table, the roast beef that was getting cold, and the 3 people who shared my blood, but not my life. I walked out of the dining room, down the hallway with the family portraits that barely featured me, and out the front door. I got into my car. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from the adrenaline of freedom. I started the engine and drove away from Briarcrest without looking back. Behind me, inside the perfect house, the dessert was still waiting in the kitchen, sweet and untouched. The aftermath of the dinner was not silence. It was a siege. For the next 3 days, my phone became an instrument of psychological warfare. My mother, Marianne, developed a precision routine that bordered on military strategy. Every morning at exactly 8:15, just as I was pouring my first cup of coffee in my apartment, the screen would light up. She never left a voicemail. She simply let it ring until the call timed out, leaving a red notification badge that stared at me like an unblinking eye. It was a digital guilt trip, a reminder that she was awake, she was suffering, and she was waiting for me to capitulate. I did not answer. By day 4, the strategy shifted. Dylan entered the fray. His messages were not pleading. They were annoyed. Fix this. He texted at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday. Mom is crying in the kitchen again. She says she has heart palpitations. You are making everyone miserable over a stupid dinner bill. He did not ask how I was. He did not apologize for calling me selfish. He simply demanded that I repair the emotional convenience of the household so he could go back to being the golden child without distractions. For the first time in my life, I instituted a physical boundary. I stopped carrying my phone into the kitchen. I left it charging in the bedroom, face down on the nightstand. I drank my coffee in the silence of my living room. Watching the dust motes dance in the morning light, the silence felt dangerous, like the calm before a storm, but it also felt like the first breath of air I had taken in years. I thought the distance would protect me. I was wrong. On Thursday afternoon, the storm made landfall at Blackwell Compliance Group. I was standing at the reception desk in the lobby, signing for a package of sensitive legal documents, when the glass doors slid open. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, who was usually unflappable, looked up and froze. "Sir, you cannot just walk past the security turnstiles," she said, her voice rising in alarm. "I am not a guest," a booming voice echoed off the polished marble walls. "I am her father." My spine stiffened. I turned around slowly. Gordon Powell stood in the center of the lobby. He was wearing his best suit, a navy wool blend that he usually reserved for bank meetings. He looked imposing, authoritative, and completely out of place in the sleek, minimalist aesthetic of my firm. He was not looking at the security guards who were stepping forward. He was looking at me. He had invaded the one sanctuary I had built for myself. "Adeline," he said, his voice projecting clearly across the silent lobby. Heads turned. 2 associates by the elevator bank stopped talking. "We need to speak. Now." I handed the pen back to Sarah. My hand did not shake. I walked toward him, my heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. I did not stop until I was 2 feet away from him. "You cannot be here, Dad," I said quietly. "This is a secure building." "And you are my daughter," he countered, loud enough for the entire front desk to hear. "Although you have not been acting like it lately. Since when do you ignore your mother's calls? Since when do you turn your back on your obligations?" "This is my workplace," I hissed, stepping closer to lower the volume of the conversation. "We are not doing this here." "Then pick up the phone," he shouted. The veneer of the respectable businessman cracked, revealing the desperate control freak underneath. "We have vendors waiting for deposits. Dylan is stressed out of his mind, and you are playing games." He looked around the lobby, making eye contact with a senior partner who was just walking in. Gordon straightened his tie, trying to enlist the room in his narrative. "Professionals honor their family obligations," he announced, as if reading a moral decree. Success means nothing if you abandon your people. The humiliation burned hot under my skin, but something else rose up to meet it. It was the cold, hard steel of my professional training. I realized in that moment that Gordon Powell was not a patriarch here. He was a liability, he was a risk factor, and I was the risk manager. "Come with me," I said. I did not wait for him to agree. I turned and swiped my badge at the turnstile, holding it open just long enough for him to follow. I led him past the open-plan desks, past the curious eyes of my colleagues, and into Conference Room B. It was a soundproof glass box used for high-stakes negotiations. I closed the door. I did not offer him a seat. "You will never show up here unannounced again," I said. My voice was not the voice of Adeline the daughter. It was the voice of Adeline the senior compliance officer. It was flat, devoid of emotion, and terrifyingly calm. Gordon blinked, taken aback by the shift. He tried to regain the upper hand. "Do not take that tone with me. I am your father. I am trying to help you do the right thing. You are hoarding that money. Adeline, it is unbecoming." "The money," I repeated. "The retention bonus," he said. "It is a windfall. You do not need it. You have your salary. You have this." He waved a hand at the glass walls, dismissing my entire career with a gesture. "You have your little life. Dylan needs a runway. That bonus should benefit the family, not your ego." The words hung in the air between us. Not your ego. He believed that my desire to keep the money I had earned through 14-hour days and sleepless nights was an act of ego. He believed that my financial independence was a theft from the family treasury. In his mind, I was not an individual. I was a resource. I was a savings account that had developed a personality, and he found it inconvenient. "Get out," I said. "Excuse me. Get out of my office," I said. "And if you ever come back here to harass me about money for Dylan's party, I will have security escort you out, and I will ensure they document the incident." Gordon stared at me. He looked for the crack in my armor. He looked for the little girl who cried when he missed her piano recital. She was not there. "You are making a mistake," he said coldly. "You are choosing money over blood." "I am choosing myself," I said. He turned and walked out. I watched him leave the building. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty elevator bay. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that betrayed my calm exterior. Suddenly, the intercom on the conference table buzzed. It was Elliot Vance, the managing partner. "Adeline, are you free?" His voice crackled through the speaker. "We have a situation with the shifting regulations in the European market. The client is panicking. I need someone to walk them through the compliance framework immediately." I looked at the door where my father had just exited. Then I looked at the speaker. "I am on my way," I said. I walked into the boardroom 3 minutes later. The team was gathered around the long table, tension radiating off them in waves. Elliot looked up when I entered. He did not ask about the scene in the lobby. He pushed a stack of files toward me. "The floor is yours, Adeline," he said. "Fix it." For the next 2 hours, I did not think about Dylan. I did not think about the $25,000. I dissected complex international laws. I laid out a strategic roadmap. I fielded aggressive questions from the client's legal team and dismantled their concerns piece by piece. When the call ended, the room was silent. "That," Elliot said, leaning back in his chair, "is why you are the best in the city. Incredible work, Adeline." "Thank you, Elliot," I said. "I mean it," he continued, looking me in the eye. "We are lucky to have you. You are a pillar of this firm." The contrast was so sharp it almost drew blood. In this building, I was a pillar. I was respected. My value was recognized and vocalized. 5 miles away, in the house in Briarcrest, I was selfish. I was an ego. I was a wallet that refused to open. I walked back to my office. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across my desk. I sat down and opened my laptop. I was done reacting. It was time to start building my case. I navigated to the directory on my hard drive. I created a new folder. I did not name it the ledger this time. I needed to be more specific. I needed to name the pain so I could organize it. I typed 2 words, birthday ledger, inside. I created subfolders, financial records, correspondence, the timeline. I thought about my father's words. Professionals honor family obligations. You are right, Dad, I whispered to the empty office. I am going to honor exactly what you have given me. I opened the first file and began to type. The screen of my laptop glowed with the stark, unforgiving light of a spreadsheet at 2 a.m. I was not sleeping. I was doing what I did best. I was hunting. My father's accusation in the lobby of Blackwell Compliance Group had triggered a reflex I usually reserved for embezzling executives and money laundering corporations. Professionals honor family obligations, he had said. The phrase gnawed at me. It felt specific. It felt like a justification for something that had already happened, not just a demand for something future. I logged into the National Credit Bureau portal. I paid the expedited fee to unlock my full credit report. Encompassing the last 15 years of financial activity, the wheels spun for a moment before the document populated. I scrolled past my mortgage, my student loans, which I had aggressively paid off 2 years ago, and my primary credit cards. Everything looked green. Everything looked perfect. Then I saw it. Buried in the revolving credit section was a credit line I did not recognize. It was a high-limit platinum card issued by a bank I had banked with in college. The status was active. The authorized user was listed clearly Gordon Powell. The billing address was not my apartment in the city. It was the house in Briarcrest. My breath hitched. I clicked on the transaction history. I expected to see nothing. I expected to see a dormant account that perhaps my father had opened as a co-signer when I was 18 and simply forgotten to close. That would have been innocent. That would have been negligent, but not malicious. But the history was not empty. 3 months ago, on the 15th of July, there was a charge for $4,500 to Elite Event Decor. I froze. July 15th was the week of Dylan's Summer White Party, a lavish gathering he had thrown to celebrate getting his real estate license. I scrolled down. 2 years ago, May 10th, a charge for Vantage Luxury Catering for $3,200. That was the weekend of Dylan's 30th birthday bash. I kept scrolling, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The pattern was undeniable. Every time Dylan had a milestone, a launch, or a celebration. This card took a hit. They were not huge, earth-shattering amounts that would trigger a fraud alert on my main monitoring app. They were surgical strikes, $2,000 here, $500 there for custom invitations, a deposit for a venue. They were using my credit score to float their lifestyle. I dug deeper into the account details. It was a joint account established when I was 19. I remembered it now. My father had taken me to the bank before my sophomore year. For emergencies, he had said, so we can transfer money to you if you get stuck. I had never used it. I had assumed they closed it when I graduated and started making my own money. They had not closed it. They had kept it open, quietly leveraging my perfect credit rating and my high debt-to-income ratio to increase the limit, then using it as a slush fund for the family image. I did not scream. I did not throw the laptop across the room. I reached for a legal pad. I picked up a pen. Item 1. I wrote, unauthorized use of joint credit facility. Item 2. I wrote, recurring subscription charges. I found those too. Small. Monthly drains that I had missed in the noise of my own finances. A premium streaming service, a wine club membership, a storage unit rental in Dylan's name. They were billing it all to the family account, which was legally backed by my social security number. It was not just theft. It was a complete lack of respect for my autonomy. They were budgeting me. Just as Tessa had said, I was not a daughter. I was a subsidy. I spent the next 3 hours printing everything. Statements, transaction IDs, merchant codes. I cross-referenced dates with my personal calendar. Adeline's birthday, no activity. Dylan's birthday, heavy activity. By the time the sun came up, I had a dossier 3 inches thick. I showered, dressed in my sharpest charcoal suit, and went to work. I did not go to my office. I went to the address Tessa Hart had texted me the night before. Marrow and Pike Advisory was a boutique firm specializing in forensic accounting and asset protection for high-net-worth individuals. It was where people went when they wanted to divorce their business partners or, in my case, their families. I sat across from a woman named Eleanor Marrow. She was 60, elegant, and had eyes that looked like they had seen every variety of human greed. "This is messy," Eleanor said, sliding the stack of papers back to me. "But it is not uncommon. Parents often view their children's success as a dividend they are owed. I want it stopped," I said. "I want my name off everything. The house deed if it is on there, the car insurance, the phone plan, and especially this account." "We can do that," Eleanor said. "But you need to understand the fallout. If we freeze this card and dispute the charges as unauthorized, the bank will go after the other account holder, your father." "I am not disputing the past charges," I said, my voice cold. "I am paying the balance off today. I am closing the loop. I do not want to send him to jail. Eleanor, I just want to cut off his supply." Eleanor nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "A clean break? Smart. It removes their ability to play the victim card in court." "Exactly," I said. "I am freezing my credit at all 3 bureaus. I am changing every password to a generated alphanumeric string they will never guess, and I am issuing a cease and desist on any further use of my identity." "It is a declaration of war," she warned. "No," I said, standing up. "It is a correction of the record." I spent the afternoon executing the plan. I called the bank. I paid off the $8,000 currently sitting on the secret card, my final gift to them, and then I instructed the bank to remove me from the account immediately. I locked down my credit reports with a PIN code. Only I knew. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything, routing the codes to a new burner phone number I had purchased that morning. The digital doors were slamming shut, one by one. I was sitting in my office at Blackwell, watching the confirmation emails roll in, when my personal phone buzzed. It was Dylan. I looked at the message. It was formatted to look like concern. It was designed to make me doubt my own reality. "Are you okay? Mom says you looked manic the other night. People are talking. Addie, they say you are spiraling. You are working too hard, and it is making you paranoid. Just come home. We can fix this." I read the words "people are talking." It was a classic manipulation tactic. Isolate the target. Make them feel like the world is judging them, so they run back to the safety of the abuser. He was trying to gaslight me into believing that my reaction to their financial abuse was a mental health crisis. I looked at the stack of evidence on my desk. I looked at the confirmation number from the credit bureau. I was not manic. I was precise. I picked up the phone and typed a response. I did not use emojis. I did not use exclamation points. I am not spiraling. I wrote, "I am auditing." I hit send. Then I turned off the phone and went back to work. The retention bonus from Blackwell Compliance Group did not sit in my savings account for long. For years. I had been trained to view money as a safety net, a buffer against the inevitable disasters my family created. But after the dinner at Briarcrest and the discovery of the unauthorized credit card, I realized that safety was an illusion. Money was not just security, it was agency. 2 weeks after freezing my credit, I signed the deed on a small, weathered brick building in the Art Museum district. It was not a house, it was a former floral shop with high tin ceilings, exposed brick walls, and oversized windows that flooded the space with natural light. I named it Juniper House Studio. It was not a business designed to make a fortune. It was a sanctuary designed to make sense of things. I envisioned it as a multi-use creative space, a place for photography workshops, local art exhibits, and the quiet, tactile hobbies I had abandoned years ago to focus on corporate law. It was a space where perfection was not the currency. Authenticity was. On a crisp Saturday evening, I unlocked the front door for my soft opening. There was no red carpet. There were no hired photographers or catered champagne towers. There was just the smell of fresh sage, warm vanilla from the candles I had actually lit this time, and the sound of jazz playing softly from a Bluetooth speaker. I had invited my real family, not the one defined by blood, but the one defined by showing up. Tessa was the first to arrive, carrying a bottle of Prosecco and a massive fern. "It has good bones," she said, looking around the space with a critical, approving eye. "And unlike your parents' house, it does not feel like a museum where you are afraid to touch the furniture. It feels like you—" "That is the point," I said, taking the plant. Then Mrs. Albright arrived. She was my neighbor from my apartment building, a widow in her 70s who had knit me a scarf every winter for 5 years. She walked in holding a Tupperware container of her famous lemon bars. When she saw me, her face crinkled into a genuine smile. "Look at you," Mrs. Albright said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of lavender laundry detergent. "You look lighter, Adeline. The weight is gone from your shoulders." "I think I finally put it down," I whispered into her shoulder. A few colleagues from Blackwell showed up later, shedding their corporate armor to laugh and drink wine out of mismatched glasses I had thrifted. We stood around the center island I had built myself, eating lemon bars and talking about everything except work. For the first time in 34 years, I was the host of an event where I was not stressed about the napkins matching the tablecloth or whether my brother was entertained. I was just Adeline, and that was enough. Late in the evening, when the light was hitting the exposed brick just right, Tessa snapped a candid photo of me. I was laughing, my head thrown back, holding a glass of wine, surrounded by people who were looking at me with affection, not expectation. I asked her to send it to me. I opened my social media app. I had been silent on there for weeks, a ghost in the digital machine. I posted the photo. I did not tag my family. I did not mention the gala. I simply wrote birthday gift to myself, a space where I do not have to earn being seen. Welcome to Juniper House. I put the phone down and went back to the party. By the time I checked it an hour later, the device was hot to the touch. The notifications were a solid wall of text. The first wave was positive. Friends from college, former coworkers, and clients were pouring in congratulations. But underneath the surface, the family channel was detonating. My mother had called 6 times. She had left no voicemails. My father had sent a text that was more of an interrogation than a message. "Where did you get the capital for this? We discussed that the bonus was for family liquidity. You are spending money we need for the launch. Call me immediately." I felt a flicker of the old anxiety, the conditioned response to jump when they snapped their fingers. But then I looked at Mrs. Albright, who was teaching one of the junior associates how to knit in the corner. I looked at the deed in my safe in the back office. This was mine. I did not reply. Then, the twist happened. It was something I had not calculated, but it was sweeter than any revenge I could have planned, because I had not blocked my family's social circle, the wealthy neighbors in Briarcrest, the country club members, the gossip-hungry socialites. They all saw the post, and they all saw the comments. Mrs. Vanderhoven, the matriarch of Briarcrest Society and my mother's social rival, had commented publicly, "What a lovely space." Adeline: "I had no idea you were so talented. I'm surprised Marianne and Gordon are not in the photo. Surely they are there to celebrate your big opening." Another comment from a family friend followed. "Is this why you missed Sunday dinner? We asked your mother where you were and she said you were sick. This does not look sick. Congratulations." The narrative my parents had carefully constructed, that I was the difficult, unstable daughter, and they were the long-suffering, supportive parents, was crumbling in real time. They were not at my opening. They had lied about my absence. And now, everyone knew it. The phone rang again. It was not my mother this time. It was Dylan. I let it go to voicemail. 20 minutes later, a silver luxury sedan screeched to a halt outside the studio, through the large front window. I saw Dylan storm out of the car. He was wearing his gala planning suit, but his tie was loosened, and his face was tight with anger. "He is here," Tessa said. Spotting him instantly, she moved to stand next to me. "Do you want me to lock the door?" No, I said, setting down my wine glass. Let him in. Dylan pushed the door open so hard the bell above it jangled violently. He marched into the center of the room, ignoring Mrs. Albright, ignoring my colleagues, ignoring the warmth of the space. He zeroed in on me. "We need to talk," he said. "Outside? Now." The room went silent. Mrs. Albright lowered her knitting needles. "I am hosting a party, Dylan," I said calmly. "You can say whatever you need to say right here." "I am not doing this in front of an audience," he hissed, glancing at my colleagues with disdain. "It is a private family matter." "I have no secrets from these people," I said. "And since you and Mom love to talk about family unity, surely you can speak in front of my friends." Dylan looked around. He realized he could not physically drag me out. He took a step closer, invading my personal space, trying to use his height to intimidate me. It was a tactic that had worked when we were teenagers. It did not work now. "Take down the post," he said, his voice low and shaking with rage. "Why?" I asked. "It is just a picture of my new studio." "You know why," he snapped. "Mrs. Vanderhoven is blowing up Mom's phone asking why we were not invited. Dad is furious. You are making us look like we are estranged." "We are estranged, Dylan," I said. "You just did not notice until it started affecting your polling numbers." "You bought this place with the money meant for my table," he accused. "You took $25,000 out of the family pot to buy a hobby shed." "I bought it with my money," I corrected him. "And it cost a lot more than $25,000. But unlike your gala, I did not have to ask anyone for a loan to pay for it." He flinched. The truth was a physical blow. He looked around the room again, seeing the genuine support, the lack of pretense, the reality of a life I had built without his permission. He saw that I was not miserable. I was not waiting by the phone. I was thriving. And that was the unforgivable sin. He leaned in close. His handsome face twisted into a sneer that revealed the rot beneath the veneer. "You think you are so smart," he whispered. "You think this is a power move, but do you realize what this makes Mom and Dad look like?" He did not ask if I was happy. He did not ask if the business was viable. He did not say congratulations. His only concern, his only metric for reality, was the reflection in the mirror of public opinion. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and loud enough for everyone to hear. "It makes them look like parents who missed their daughter's life because they were too busy building a monument to their son. And for the first time, Dylan, the picture is accurate." Dylan stared at me. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Tessa, who was holding her phone up, clearly recording the interaction. He looked at Mrs. Albright, who was glaring at him with the ferocity of a protective grandmother. He realized he had walked into a trap of his own making. He turned on his heel and stormed out, the bell jangling once more to mark his exit. I watched him go. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was the breaking of the final thread. "Is everything okay, dear Mrs.?" Albright asked into the silence. I turned back to my guests. I picked up my wine glass. "Everything is perfect," I said. "Who wants more lemon bars?" The fallout from Dylan's humiliated exit at Juniper House Studio was not immediate silence. It was a coordinated social assault. The Powell family did not retreat when they were embarrassed. They simply rewrote the narrative until they were the heroes and the person who embarrassed them was the villain. It started with a call from my Aunt Brenda on Monday morning. Brenda was my mother's sister, a woman who communicated exclusively in backhanded compliments and passive-aggressive concern. I was in the middle of reviewing a contract for a new client at Blackwell when my personal phone buzzed. "Adeline," Brenda's voice dripped with a sugary, synthetic warmth, "I'm just calling because we are all so worried about you. Your mother told me about the scene you caused at your little art shop. Honey, everyone is saying you are acting out." "Acting out?" I repeated, staring at the legal brief on my monitor. "I am 34 years old. Brenda, I do not act out. I establish boundaries." "See," That is exactly what I mean, she sighed. You sound so defensive. People are talking. Adeline, they are saying you are having a breakdown because you cannot handle Dylan's success. Jealousy is such an ugly thing to carry around. It makes you look unstable. I gripped the phone tighter. They were pivoting. They realized they could not deny that they had missed my birthday. So they were changing the story. Now, the story was not that they were neglectful parents. The story was that Adeline was mentally unwell, hysterical, and rewriting history because she was envious of her golden brother. They were pathologizing my reaction to their abuse to discredit me. Is that what they are saying? I asked calmly. Or is that what Mom is telling them to say? We just want you to get help, Brenda said, ignoring my question. Maybe take some time off. Close that studio. Focus on getting better. I hung up. 10 minutes later, the text messages started arriving from random family friends. Thinking of you. Hope you find peace. Don't let bitterness ruin your beautiful spirit. It was a barrage of pity designed to isolate me. They were painting me as the broken bird that needed to be corralled back into the family cage for my own good. Then came the ultimatum. My mother called at noon. She did not pretend to be nice this time. Family emergency dinner, she announced the moment I picked up. Tomorrow night, we expect you to be there. I am busy, I said. You are not busy, she snapped. You are destroying this family's reputation. Mrs. Vanderhoven called me this morning asking if we needed a recommendation for a family therapist. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? You need to come home and fix this. Fix it how? I asked. Your father has a solution, she said. We have been discussing your venture, the studio. It is a distraction. It looks unprofessional. Dad thinks it is best if we manage the image control. Just come to dinner. We will lay it all out. I paused. A solution. That sounded ominous. I cannot do tonight, I said. I have a board meeting. This was a lie. But I needed 24 hours to prepare. I will come Tuesday. Tuesday, she agreed. 7 o'clock. And Adeline, do not bring any of your little friends. This is family only. I hung up and stared at the wall of my office. My father had a solution. I knew exactly what that meant. He had spent his life solving Dylan's problems by throwing money at them, and solving my problems by erasing them. Later that afternoon, the nature of the solution became clear via a long, rambling email from my father. He did not frame it as a demand. Of course, he framed it as financial advice. Adeline. The email read, regarding Juniper House, it is a liability for someone in your position to run a storefront. It suggests a lack of focus on your career at Blackwell. I have drafted a proposal where we transfer the deed of the studio into the Powell Family Trust. We will manage the overhead and the public relations. You can still play with your art projects, but the family will control the messaging to ensure it does not conflict with Dylan's brand. We need to present a cohesive front. I laughed out loud in my empty office. It was a cold, sharp sound. They wanted to seize my asset. They wanted to take the one thing I had built for myself, the thing that proved I did not need them, and put it under their control so they could silence me. Then came the carrot to go with the stick. Dylan texted me an hour later. Dad says you are coming Tuesday. Look, if you agree to the transfer and cover the $25,000 for the table, I will make a speech about you at the gala. I will publicly acknowledge your birthday. I will tell everyone you are the best sister in the world. Great PR for you. We can spin this whole thing as a misunderstanding. It was a transaction. My dignity for $25,000 and a fake compliment. I typed a reply. I will be there Tuesday. I will bring the documents. Dylan replied instantly with a thumbs-up emoji. Smart choice. They thought I was capitulating. They thought documents meant the deed to Juniper House and a check for the gala. They thought I was coming to bend the knee, to apologize for my little rebellion, and to let them absorb me back into the machinery of Dylan's life. They were wrong. I spent the rest of Monday and all of Tuesday morning in the print center at Blackwell. I was not printing a deed transfer. I was assembling an indictment. I opened the birthday ledger folder. I printed the timeline I had created, a side-by-side comparison of the last 10 years. On the left column, Adeline's birthday. The entries were stark. No call. Text received 3 days late. Sent check for Dylan's car repair. On the right column, Dylan's events. The entries were lavish. 30th birthday yacht party. Real estate license dinner. Engagement party canceled. Rebranding launch. Then I printed the financial records I had unearthed with Tessa's help. The credit card statements from the secret account. The unauthorized charges for catering, decor, and travel that matched the dates of Dylan's parties perfectly. I highlighted every single instance where my credit had been used to fund their image. I organized everything into a heavy black file box. I labeled the tabs with clinical precision: fraud, theft, neglect. I added one last thing to the box. It was a single sheet of paper, a cease and desist letter drafted by the legal team at Marrow and Pike, formally notifying Gordon and Marianne Powell that any further use of my identity for financial purposes would result in immediate litigation. On Tuesday evening, I drove to Briarcrest. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the manicured lawns. I felt a strange sense of calm. For years, I had driven this route with a knot of anxiety in my stomach, wondering if I would be good enough, wondering if they would finally see me. Tonight, I did not care if they saw me. I was going to make them see themselves. I pulled into the driveway. My father's car was there. Dylan's car was there. The gang was all here, waiting to accept my surrender. I walked up the front steps. I did not use my key. I rang the doorbell. My mother answered. She was wearing a structured dress, her face set in a mask of disappointed matriarch. "You are late," she said, stepping aside. "I am right on time," I said. I walked past her into the foyer. I was carrying the black file box in my arms. It was heavy, filled with 15 years of receipts and silence. "Is that the deed?" my father called out from the living room. He was sitting in his armchair, swirling a glass of scotch. Dylan was leaning against the mantel, looking smug. "It is the paperwork," I said. "Good," Gordon said, gesturing to the coffee table. "Put it down. Let us get this signed so we can eat. Your mother made pot roast." I walked into the room. The air was thick with their expectation. They looked at me like I was a wayward investment that was finally correcting its course. They had no idea that I was not there to save their reputation. I was there to foreclose on it. I did not put the box on the table. I placed it on the floor, right next to the archway that led to the door. I wanted it to be the last thing they saw when I left. "We are not signing anything, Dad," I said. Gordon frowned. "What are you talking about? You said you were bringing the documents." "I did," I said. "But not the ones you think." I opened the lid of the box. "Adeline, stop playing games," Dylan said, pushing off the mantel. "Just give us the check and the deed. We have a schedule to keep." I reached into the box and pulled out the first file. It was thick. It was bound with a red clip. "I am not here to negotiate a surrender," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I am here to close the account." I tossed the file onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud, sliding across the polished wood until it stopped inches from my father's drink. "What is this?" Gordon asked, staring at the file. "Everything," I said. I spent the 48 hours before the Tuesday dinner turning the living room of my apartment into a war room. I was not preparing a toast. I was building a case. My training in compliance had taught me that the truth is not a feeling. It is a document. It is a timestamp. It is a signature on a receipt. If I walked into that house and simply told them how much they had hurt me, they would dismiss it as hysteria. They would call me sensitive. They would rewrite the narrative until I was the villain and they were the bewildered saints. So I decided not to bring my feelings. I decided to bring the evidence. I cleared off my dining table and opened the black file box. I began to assemble the birthday ledger with the cold precision of a forensic auditor. The first section was the timeline. I created a spreadsheet that spanned the last 10 years. On the left side, I listed the date of my birthday. On the right side, I listed the date of Dylan's nearest celebration. The visual contrast was stark enough to stop a heart. 2018. My birthday. A text message from my mother sent 2 days late, reading simply, "Happy birthday, Busy Bee." Dylan's event that same week, a networking gala at a rooftop bar in Center City. 2020. My birthday. Zero contact. My father had claimed later that he thought I was out of town. Dylan's event that same week. A 30-person dinner at a steakhouse to celebrate him, thinking about applying to an MBA program he never actually attended. I printed out the photos to match the dates. I found the Instagram posts, the Facebook albums, and the tagged photos from the events I was not invited to. I placed the glossy prints next to the empty dates on my side of the ledger. The silence of my birthdays was no longer an abstract concept. It was a blank space on a page next to a riot of color and champagne that belonged to my brother. Next came the financial cross-referencing. This was the section that turned the knife. I took the bank statements from the unauthorized credit card I had uncovered. I used a yellow highlighter to mark the charges: event decor, luxury catering, venue deposit. Then I matched those charges to the dates of Dylan's parties. The pattern was undeniable. On the day I turned 30, the family had forgotten to call me, but on that exact day, the credit card in my name had been charged $4,500 for a milestone celebration package at a vineyard. They had used my credit rating to throw a party for Dylan while leaving me in silence. I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. I did not have time to be sick. I had to be thorough. I moved to the digital evidence. I printed out the group chat logs from the last week. I blew up the text messages so they were impossible to ignore. She always caves. Adeline got paid. She can finally contribute like family. We can spin this whole thing as a misunderstanding. I mounted these on stiff cardstock. I wanted them to see their own words. I wanted them to read the casual cruelty they traded in private. It was one thing to say these things in the safety of a digital thread. It was another to see them printed in black and white, staring back at you like an indictment. Then I prepared the invisible evidence. This was the pettiest part of my case, but also the most devastating. It was the proof that they did not just use me, they did not even know me. I gathered the few physical cards I'd received over the years, mostly from frantic last-minute gift grabs, and the digital invitations to family gatherings. I circled the name, Adeline. In the last decade, my aunt and my father had spelled my name correctly exactly twice. My mother vacillated between 3 different spellings depending on her mood. It was a small detail, a clerical error to most, but to me, it was the ultimate proof of my insignificance. You do not misspell the name of someone you love. You do not misspell the name of someone you respect. You only misspell the name of a utility you call upon when the lights go out. I placed the misspelled names in a separate folder labeled Identity. Finally, I drafted the letter. It was a single page. I kept the language simple and devoid of legalese. It was not a contract for them to sign. It was a declaration of independence, effective immediately. I wrote, I am severing all financial ties with the Powell family. I will no longer provide loans, bailouts, or professional access to my network. I will no longer allow my name or my image to be used for social leverage or reputation management. My presence at future events is conditional on respectful treatment. If these boundaries are crossed, I will cease all contact. It was the hardest thing I had ever written. It felt like amputating a limb, but looking at the pile of evidence on my table, I knew the limb was already gangrenous. It had to go, or it would kill me. There was a knock on my door. I looked up, startled. It was Tuesday afternoon, 2 hours before I was due to leave for Briarcrest. I opened the door to find Mrs. Albright standing there. She was holding a small, tissue-wrapped package. I saw your light on all night, she said gently. I figured you were getting ready for the lion's den. Something like that, I said, leaning against the doorframe. I am just getting my papers in order. She reached out and took my hand, pressing the small package into my palm. Her skin was paper-thin and warm. I made this for you in the pottery class last week, she said. It is not much, but I want you to keep it in your pocket tonight. I unwrapped the tissue. Inside was a small, smooth stone made of fired clay. It was glazed a deep, steady blue, the color of the ocean at its deepest point. It was heavy for its size. It is a grounding stone, Mrs. Albright said. When you feel like they are spinning you around or making you doubt what you know is true, you put your hand in your pocket and you hold on to that. You remember that you are solid, you are real. She looked me in the eye, her expression fierce and protective. Do not let them shrink you. Adeline, she commanded. You have spent your whole life making yourself small so they would have more room. Tonight, you take up your space. I felt a lump form in my throat, hot and sharp. Thank you, I whispered. Go get them, she said. I went back inside. I showered and dressed in my armor. I did not wear the soft, floral dresses my mother preferred. I wore a tailored black suit with sharp lines and high heels that clicked with authority against the floor. I pulled my hair back into a severe, polished bun. I packed the files into the black box. I placed the timeline, the financial records, the chat logs, and the cease and desist letter in their designated slots. I put Mrs. Albright's blue stone in my right blazer pocket. Its weight was a comfort against my hip. I stood by the door of my apartment and looked around. My sanctuary, my quiet, safe space. I took my phone out of my purse. The screen was lit up with a text from Dylan. Don't be late. Dad is in a mood. I did not reply. I held the power button down until the screen went black. I was not going to be reachable. I was not going to be interrupted. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs until my ribs expanded against the silk lining of my suit. I let the air out slowly, pushing away the fear, the guilt, and the little girl who just wanted her parents to clap for her. I am not walking in as their daughter, I said to the empty room. I am walking in as the truth. I picked up the box and walked out the door. The time for waiting was over. The trial was about to begin. I stood on the front porch of the house in Briarcrest. The heavy brass key I had carried since I was 16 burned a phantom weight in my pocket. Using it would have been a reflex, a silent admission that I was still a subordinate resident of this house. A child returning to the nest. I dropped the key back into the darkness of my bag. I raised my hand and pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed inside. It was a formal sound. It was the sound of a guest, or a stranger. The door opened. Marianne stood there. She was wearing a structured navy dress, her face set in a mask of tragic disappointment. She blinked at me. You have a key, she said. I preferred to ring, I said. I walked past her. The dining room was staged like a set for a play about family intervention. My father, Gordon, sat at the head of the table, his hands clasped over a leather portfolio. My mother sat to his right, a box of tissues already placed strategically near her water glass. Her mascara was waterproof. I noted the detail with professional detachment. She was prepared for a performance. Dylan stood by the sideboard, swirling a glass of red wine, looking bored and victorious. Sit down, Gordon said. It was not an invitation. It was a command. I remained standing. I walked to the table and placed the black file box on the polished mahogany surface. The sound of the heavy plastic hitting the wood was the only noise in the room. We saw the post about your little shop, Gordon started, skipping the pleasantries. Juniper House, it is financially reckless. Adeline, buying commercial real estate in this economy without consulting me, it is irresponsible. It is a cry for attention, Marianne added. Shaking her head sadly, she reached for a tissue, though she was not crying yet. You are acting out because you feel left behind by Dylan's success. We understand, honey, but embarrassing us publicly is not the way to handle your jealousy. Jealousy, I repeated. It is pathetic, Dylan said, taking a sip of wine. He leaned back against the sideboard, looking at me with a smirk. You bought a clubhouse so you could pretend to be important. Just transfer the deed to the trust like Dad said. We will clean up the mess. We will frame it as a philanthropic venture, so it does not look like a manic episode. I felt the weight of the blue stone Mrs. Albright had given me in my pocket. I did not scream. I did not defend my art. I did not argue about my mental health. "Let us talk facts," I said. I opened the box. I pulled out the first folder. It was labeled the timeline. I slid a series of photographs across the table. They fanned out like a winning poker hand. 2019, I said, pointing to a photo of Dylan on a yacht, surrounded by friends, holding a magnum of champagne. Dylan's 31st birthday. Cost estimate was $12,000. I pointed to the space next to it on the paper I had printed. It was blank. Adeline's 31st birthday, I said. No party. No card. One text message sent 3 days late. I slid the next photo across the wood. 2020, I said. Dylan's 32nd, dinner for 20 at the Prime Rib. I pointed to the blank space again. Adeline's 32nd, forgotten entirely. The silence in the room began to curdle. Dylan frowned, setting his glass down. The smirk faltered. So what? He scoffed. I am more social than you. You are an introvert. You hate parties. We did our best, Marianne interrupted, her voice trembling on cue. We love you both equally. You are just difficult to plan for. Adeline, you are always working. We tried, but you were never available. I was not available, I said, because I was working to earn the bonus you are trying to take. I pulled out the second item, the mounted cardstock with the group chat screenshots. I placed it directly in front of my mother. Read it, I said. Marianne looked down. She saw her own words blown up in high definition. Adeline got paid. She can finally contribute like family. She always caves. That was taken out of context, Gordon snapped, though his face had paled slightly. The context is clear, I said. You do not see me as a daughter. You see me as a line of credit. You are twisting things, Marianne cried, finally dabbing at her dry eyes. We just wanted you to be part of the celebration. By paying $25,000 for a table. I asked. Dylan slammed his hand on the sideboard. The sound made my mother jump. Oh my God, get over it, he shouted. It is just money. You have plenty of it. Why do you have to make everything so complicated? He glared at me, his mask of charm slipping to reveal the petulant child beneath. You used to be cool about this stuff, he sneered. You used to just write the check and shut up. You were always easier to manage when you were desperate for approval. The room went dead silent. Easier to manage. He had said the quiet part out loud. Manage, I said softly, like an employee or a resource. That is not what he meant, Gordon interjected quickly, sensing the danger in the air. It is exactly what he meant, I said. And since we are discussing management, let us look at the accounting. I reached into the box for the final folder. This was the heavy one, the one with the unauthorized credit card statements. I opened it. I took out a single sheet of paper, highlighted in neon yellow. July 15th, 2023, I read aloud. $4,200, vendor elite event decor. I looked at Dylan. That was the deposit for your summer white party, was it not? Dylan froze. His eyes darted to the paper. May 10th, 2021. I continued. $3,000, vendor Vantage Luxury Catering. I looked at my father. That was for Dylan's 30th birthday dinner, the one I was not invited to. I placed the statement on top of the photos. You did not just forget my birthday, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a razor. You financed his birthdays using a credit line in my name. You used my credit score, my identity, and my financial standing to pay for the parties where I was not welcome. The air left the room. It was not an emotional vacuum anymore. It was a legal one. My mother stopped crying. She looked at the statement, then at Gordon. She knew what this meant. This was not a family squabble. This was fraud. Dylan looked at the paper, then at me. For the first time, the arrogance evaporated. He looked small. I did not know, Dylan stammered. Dad said he handled it. He said it was the family account. It was a joint account, I corrected him. In my name, without my permission. I looked at my father. Gordon Powell was not looking at me like a disappointed patriarch anymore. He was looking at me like a man who realizes he has walked into a trap. He was looking at the documents with the terrified recognition of a man who knows that paper trails do not lie. He did not yell. He did not bluster about family obligations. He did not call me selfish. He leaned forward, his face gray in the chandelier light. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. His voice was a whisper, stripped of all its power. How? He asked, pointing a shaking finger at the file. Did you get this? The silence in the dining room was absolute, broken only by the heavy, ragged breathing of my father. He looked at the bank statement spread across the mahogany table like a losing hand of cards. The evidence of his financial maneuvering was undeniable. He had been caught, not by a stranger, but by the daughter he had underestimated for 3 decades. Then, the fear on his face hardened into anger. It was the predictable reaction of a man losing control. He slammed his hand onto the table, making the crystal glasses jump. "So what is this?" Gordon shouted, his face turning a mottled red. "You broke into my records. You investigated your own family. What do you want?" "Adeline, do you want an apology? Is that what this theatrical display is for?" "Fine. I am sorry. I am sorry we borrowed your credit. I am sorry we did not throw you a parade every year. Are you happy now?" He looked at me with disdain, expecting me to crumble. He expected me to accept the scraps of his remorse and retreat. "I do not want an apology," I said. My voice was calm, steady, and terrifyingly clear. "An apology is just words, and your words have lost their value." "Then what?" my mother cried, clutching her napkin. "What do you want from us?" "I want a termination of access," I said. I reached into the box and pulled out the single-page letter I had drafted with the attorneys at Marrow and Pike. I placed it gently on top of the pile of evidence. "I am terminating your access to my finances," I said. "I am terminating your access to my professional network. I am terminating your access to my time. And most importantly, I am terminating your access to my guilt." Gordon stared at the letter. "You cannot do that. We are family." "I can," I said. "And I have—" I took a step back, creating physical distance between myself and the table. "Regarding Juniper House," I continued, addressing Dylan directly, "you mentioned transferring the deed to the family trust to manage the image. That will not be happening." "You need us to manage it," Dylan argued, though his voice lacked its usual arrogance. "You do not know how to run a brand." "Actually," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips, "I registered the studio this morning under a specific limited liability structure with an irrevocable operating agreement. The bylaws explicitly state that no family member of the primary owner can serve on the board, hold an advisory role, or use the property for personal promotion without a unanimous vote from independent trustees." Dylan's jaw dropped. He understood what that meant. "You locked us out," he whispered. "I compliance-proofed it." I corrected him. "If you want to hold a gala there, Dylan, you can submit a request through the public portal like everyone else. You will pay the full market rate, and you will sign a contract. There will be no family discounts. There will be no favors. And there will be absolutely no image borrowing." I looked at my parents. They sat frozen, realizing that the dynamic had permanently shifted. The Bank of Adeline was closed. The doormat had become a steel door. "I am leaving the birthday ledger with you," I said, gesturing to the box. "Keep it, read it, or burn it. I do not care. But you cannot unsee it now. You cannot pretend you did not know." I turned to leave. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor. A sound of finality. "Adeline," Dylan's voice stopped me. It was quiet. It was the voice of a brother, not a competitor. I turned around. He was looking at the timeline of photos I had left on the table, the side-by-side comparison of his lavish parties and my empty days. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wide with a genuine, haunting realization. Did you really keep all this? He asked. For 10 years. I did not have to keep it. Dylan, I said softly. I just had to live it. He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. He saw himself in the story I had told, and for the first time, he did not like the character he was playing. I walked to the front door. I opened it, letting the cool night air rush in to displace the stifling atmosphere of the house. Adeline, my mother called out. I paused. She had not stumbled over the syllables. She had not called me Adeline or Addie or her. She had said my name, perfectly. It was a small thing, a belated correction, but it hung in the air like a truce. I did not turn back. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and exhaled. I did not cry. I felt lighter than air. I had walked in as a ghost, and I had walked out as a person. 1 year later, the air inside Juniper House Studio smelled of vanilla, old books, and fresh rain. It was October 24th. Outside, the Philadelphia leaves were turning gold and crimson, but inside, the space was warm and bright. String lights hung from the exposed beams, casting a soft glow over the room. There was no stiffness here. There were no staged photos. There was just the sound of laughter, real, raucous laughter that bounced off the brick walls. Tessa was pouring wine. Mrs. Albright was sitting in the corner, holding court with a group of young artists. My colleagues from Blackwell were there, celebrating not just my birthday, but my recent promotion to partner. I had made partner not because I worked myself to death, but because I had learned to value my own judgment. I stood by the center island, looking at the cake. It was a simple carrot cake, my favorite, covered in cream cheese frosting. It had 35 candles on it. Every single one was lit. The bell above the door chimed. The room quieted slightly. I looked up. Dylan stood in the doorway. He looked different. He was not wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a sweater. He looked tired. But it was an honest kind of tired. He was not holding a contract or a request for a loan. He walked over to me. The guests watched, wary, but he ignored them. He stopped in front of me and held out a small, rectangular package wrapped in brown paper. "Happy birthday, Adeline," he said. I took the package. I unwrapped it slowly. It was a picture frame. Inside was a photograph I had never seen before. It was old, grainy, and clearly restored. It showed me at age 7, sitting on the swing set in our backyard, laughing with my head thrown back, completely alone but completely joyful. "I found it in one of Dad's old boxes in the attic," Dylan said quietly. "I realized something when I looked at it. You were always there. We were just looking the wrong way." My throat tightened. It was not an apology. It was an acknowledgement, and that was better. "Thank you," I said. The bell chimed again. My mother walked in. She looked hesitant. Standing on the threshold of the world I had built, she was holding a small box from the bakery down the street. She walked over to us, her steps tentative. "I brought a cupcake," she said, her voice small. "Just in case?" She placed a single red velvet cupcake on the table next to the big cake. She pulled a candle from her purse and lit it. I looked at them. They were not perfect. They never would be. They were still the people who had hurt me, the people who had forgotten me. But they were here, in my space, on my terms. I had not opened the door to let them take from me. I had opened the door because I finally had enough to give without depleting myself. I did not hug them immediately. I let the moment sit, honest and imperfect. "Make a wish," Tessa shouted from across the room. I looked at the 35 candles on my cake. I looked at the single candle on the cupcake my mother had brought. I looked at the photo Dylan had given me. I closed my eyes. I realized I did not need to wish for anything. I had already given myself the only thing that mattered. I blew out the candles. I looked directly into the camera, breaking the fourth wall, and smiled. "If you could give yourself one gift that changes everything," I asked, "what would it be?" Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope Adeline's journey gave you the courage to light your own fuse. If you enjoyed this story, please comment down below and tell me where you are listening from. I would love to know how far our stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people who need to hear it. See you in the next one.